The power of critical thinking, the masterclass. The purpose of this masterclass is to empower you to become a critical thinker. You will learn how this skill will make you become in the top 1% of thinkers whose influence are legendary. You came into this world without opinions or judgments or values or viewpoints, and now your head is brimming with them. If you try to write them all, you will be busy for the rest of your life. Your opinions, views, and ideas help you make your way through the world. They guide you to failure and success, ignorance and understanding, good and bad, paralysis and empowerment. Some of your beliefs indeed inform you, and some blind you. Some are true, others are not. But the question is, which ones are which? This kind of question, a question is about the quality of your beliefs, is the fundamental concern of critical thinking. Determining the quality or value of your beliefs is a function of thought. The kind of thinking that does this job best is critical thinking, a skill that higher education fosters. This means that critical thinking is not about what you think, but how you think. Notice also that the quality of beliefs is not about what factors cause you to have the ideas you do. A sociologist might tell you how society has influenced some of your moral choices. A psychologist might describe how your emotions cause you to cling to particular opinions. Your best friend might allege that you have unconsciously absorbed most of your beliefs directly from your parents. But none of these speculations has much to do with the central task of critical thinking. Critical thinking focuses not on what causes a belief, but on whether it is worth believing. An idea is worth acknowledging or accepting if we have good reasons to take it. The better the reasons for acceptance, the more likely the belief is to be true. Now, critical thinking offers a set of standards embodied in techniques, attitudes, and principles that we use to assess beliefs and determine if they are supported by good reasons. After all, we want our thoughts to be accurate and good guides for dealing with the world. And critical thinking is the best tool we have for achieving this goal. Here's one way to wrap up these points in a concise definition. The recipe for perpetual ignorance is be satisfied with your opinions and content with your knowledge. These words were said by Albert Hubbard. Let's come to the basics of critical thinking. The systematic evaluation or formulation of beliefs or statements by rational standards. Critical thinking is systematic because it involves distinct procedures and methods. It entails assessments and formulation because it's used to assess existing beliefs and devise new ones. And it operates according to rational standards in that beliefs are judged by how well they are supported by reasons. Critical thinking, of course, involves logic. Logic is the study of sound reasoning or inference and the rules that govern it. Critical thinking is broader than logic because it requires logic and the truth or falsity of statements, the evaluation of arguments and evidence, and the use of analysis and investigation. In considerable measure, our lives are defined by our actions and choices. Our actions and preferences are guided by our thinking. So, our thinking had better be good. We are hit by blizzard of assertions, opinions, arguments, and pronouncements from all directions almost every day. They all implore us to believe, to agree, to accept, to follow, to submit. Suppose we care whether our choices are right and our beliefs are true. In that case, if we want to rise above blind acceptance and arbitrary decisions, we must use the tools provided by critical thinking. We, of course, always have the option of taking the easy way out. We can simply gloom unto whatever beliefs or statements come blowing by in the wind, adopting viewpoints because they are favored by others or because they make us feel good. But then we forfeit control of our lives and let the wind take us wherever it will, as if we had no more say in the outcome than a leaf in a storm. A consequence then of going with the wind is loss of personal freedom. If you passively accept beliefs that have been handed to you by your parents, your culture, or your teachers, then those beliefs are not really yours. You just happen to be in a particular place and time when they were handed out. If they are not really yours and you let them guide your choices and actions, then they are not. You are in charge of your life. Your beliefs are yours only if you critically examine them to see if they are supported by good reasons. To review your thoughts in this way is to look at your life, for your beliefs define your life in considerable manner and measure. To forego such scrutiny is to abandon your chance of making your life deliberately and authentically meaningful. The great philosopher Socrates says it best, and I quote, "The unexamined life is not worth living," close quote. Our choice of whether to apply critical thinking skills is not an all or nothing decision. Each of us uses critical thinking to some degree in our lives. We often evaluate reasons for and against, believing that someone has committed a crime or a mistake. But the more urgent consideration is not just whether we sometimes use critical thinking, but how well we use it. Many people, however, will have none of this, and perhaps you are one of them. They believe that critical thinking, or what they take to be critical thinking, makes one excessively critical or cynical, emotionally cold, and creatively constrained. For example, some view anything that smacks logic and rationality as a negation or a negative enterprise designed to attack someone else's thinking and to score points by putting people in their place. A few of these take the word critical here to mean fault finding or capping. No doubt some people try to use essential thinking primarily for offensive purposes. Still, this approach goes against critical thinking principles. The necessity in critical thinking is used in the sense of exercising or involving careful judgment or judicious evaluation. Critical thinking is about determining what is justified in believing. That involves an openness to other points of view, tolerance for opposing perspectives, a focus on the issue at hand, and fair statements of arguments and evidence. To paraphrase a bumper sticker slogan, good critical thinking does not make cynics, people make cynics. Some people fear that if they apply critical thinking to their lives, they will become cold and unemotional, just like a computer abuzz with logic and rote functions. But this is a confusing notion. Critical thinking and feelings actually complement one another. Indeed, part of thinking critically is ensuring that we don't let our emotions distort our judgments. But critical thinking can also help clarify our feelings and deal with them more effectively. Our emotions often need to be guided or need guidance for reasons. Likewise, our reasoning needs our feelings. Our feelings motivate us to action, and without motivation, our sense could never get off the ground. Then there is this dubious assumption. Critical thinking is the enemy of creativity. To some people, critical thinking is a sterile and rigid mode of thought that constrains the imagination, hobbles artistic vision, and prevents thinking outside the box. But critical thinking and creative thinking are not opposed to one another. Good critical thinkers can learn their imaginations run through free, just like everyone else. They can create and enjoy poetry, music, art, literature, and plain old fun in the same way and to the same degree as the rest of the world. Critical thinking can complement creative thinking because it is needed to assess and enhance the creation. Scientists, for example, often dream up some very fanciful theories, but then scientists use all of their critical thinking skills to evaluate what they have produced. This critical examination enables them to select the most promising approaches and weed out unworkable ones. Critical thinking perfects the creation. In an essential sense, critical thinking is thinking outside the box. When we absorb the ideas we encounter, when we refuse to consider any alternative explanations or theories, when we conform to our thoughts to the group's wishes, we let our thinking be controlled by bias and stereotypes, and also of superstition and wishful thinking are deep in the box. But we rise above all when we dare to think critically, when we are willing to guide our actions so it should be of high quality. Socrates, the great Socrates, said, "The unexamined life is not worth living," close quote. Critical thinking involves determining what we are justified in believing, being open to new perspectives, and fairly assessing the views of others and, of course, of ourselves as well. Critical thinking complements both our emotions and our creativity. Critical thinking is thinking outside the box. Claims and reasons. Critical thinking is a rational, systematic process that we apply to beliefs of all kinds. As we use the term here, belief is just another statement or a claim statement asserts that something is or is not the case. Reasons provide support for a statement. That is, they provide us with grounds for believing that a piece of information is accurate. Reasons are themselves expressed as statements. So, a notice describing an explanation or justification is used to show that another opinion is valid or likely to be true. This combination of views, a comment, or thoughts supposedly provides reasons for accepting another idea is an argument. Arguments are the main focus of critical thinking. They are the most essential tool for evaluating the truth of words, our own and those of others, and formulating statements worthy of acceptance. Arguments are therefore necessary for the advancement of knowledge in all fields. Critical thinking is the systematic evaluation of formulation of beliefs or statements by rational standards. Critical thinking is systematic because it involves distinct procedures and methods. It entails assessment and formulation because it's used to assess existing beliefs and devise new ones. Critical thinking matters Yes, it does. Because and are defined by our actions and choices, and our actions and preferences are guided by our thinking. Critical thinking helps guide us towards beliefs worthy of acceptance, which can help us to be successful in life. However, we define success. A consequence of not thinking critically is a loss of personal freedom. If you passively accept beliefs that have been handed to you by your family and your culture, then those beliefs are not really yours. If they are not really yours and you let them guide your choices and actions, then they are not you. Are in charge of your life. Your beliefs are yours only if you critically examine them to see if they are supported by good reasons. Some people believe that critical thinking will make them cynical, emotionally cold, and creatively constrained, but there is no good reason to think that this is the case. Critical thinking does not necessarily lead to cynicism. It can complement our feelings by helping us sort them out, and it doesn't limit creativity. It allows perfecting it. Critical thinking, therefore, is a rational, systematic process that we apply to beliefs of all kinds as we use the term here. Belief is just another statement, word, or claim. A statement is an assertion that something is so or is not the case. When you are engaged in critical thinking, you are primarily evaluating a comment or formulating one. In both cases, your primary task is to determine how strongly to believe the information based on how likely it is to be confirmed. The strength of your belief will depend on the power of these reasons in favor of the statement. In critical thinking, an argument is not a feud, but a set of statements supposedly providing reasons for accepting another information. The ideas given in support of another statement are called the premises. The word that the premises are used to support is called the conclusion. An argument then is a group of messages. Some of them, the premises, are intended to support another of them, the conclusion. Being able to identify arguments is an essential skill on which many other critical thinking skills are based. The task is made more accessible by indicator words that frequently accompany statements and signal that a premise or conclusion is present. As humans spend a great deal of our time protecting, maintaining, and comforting our own mental life, our own selves, a perfectly natural urge that does no harm until we push our self-saving efforts so far, too far. How far is too far? In the service of our almighty selves, we distort our judgment and raise our risk of error, which is ironically a risk to ourselves. Self-interested thinking takes several forms. We may decide to accept a claim solely because it advances our interests or coincides with it. The influence of self on your thinking can take another form. You may be tempted to accept claims and other reasons that they help you save face. We all like to think of ourselves as excelling in various ways. We may believe that we are above average in intelligence, integrity, talent, compassion, physical beauty, visual prowess, athletic ability, and much more. But we not only like to think such things about ourselves, but we also want others to think the same about us. Critical thinking takes place in a mental environment consisting of our experiences, thoughts, and feelings. Some elements of internal environment can sabotage our essential thinking efforts or make critical thinking more difficult. Fortunately, we can exert some control over these elements. With time and practice, it is possible to detect errors in our view and restrain attitudes and feelings that can disrupt our reasoning and achieving enough objectivity to make critical thinking possible. The most common hindrances to critical thinking fall into two main categories. The first one is those obstacles that crop up because of how we think. The second one is those that occur because of what we think. The first category comprises psychological factors such as our fears, attitudes, motivations, and desires. The second category is made up of certain philosophical beliefs. None of us is immune to the psychological obstacles. Among them are the products of selfish thinking. We may accept a claim solely because it advances our interest or just because it helps us save face. To overcome these pressures, we must be aware of strong emotions that can warp our thinking. Be alert to ways that critical thinking can be undermined and ensure that we take into account complete relevant factors when we evaluate a claim. The first category of hindrance also includes those that arise because of group pressure. These obstacles include conformist pressures from groups that we belong to and ethnocentric urges to think that our group is superior to others. The best defense against group pressure is to proportion our beliefs according to the strengths of reasons. We may also have certain core beliefs that undermine critical thinking. Subjective relativity is the view that truth depends solely on what someone believes, a notion that may do an essential review looks superfluous. But subjective relativity leads to some strange consequences. For example, if the doctrine were true, each of us will be infallible. Also, subjective relativism has a logical problem. It is self-defeating. Its truth implies its falsity. There are no good reasons to accept this form of relativism. Social relativism is the view that truth is relative to societies, a claim that will also seem to make critical thinking unnecessary, but this notion is undermined by the same kinds of problems that plague subjective relativism. Philosophical skepticism is the doctrine that we know much less than we think we do. One form of philosophical skepticism says that we cannot know anything unless the belief is beyond all possible doubt. But this is not a plausible criterion for knowledge. To be knowledge, claims need not be beyond all possible doubt, but beyond all reasonable doubt. Signing off, Dr. Masase Kanimisha Kosa, the Thinking Futurist. Thank you.